Hi, I'm Ian Deming, and this is Jared Valenzola, and this is Uh-Oh Politics, the show where we say, oh no, because politics is happening, as it always does.
That's right.
We are now in the general election season. Primaries have come and gone.
It is shocking, although I think there are still some states that technically are voting, but obviously as...
Is Dean Phillips still in?
No. Although, was he the one who suspended and then unsuspended his campaign?
No, that was Marianne Williamson.
Marianne Williamson, right. As was aptly predicted, the nominees are going to be Donald Trump and Joe Biden.
Oh, yes. And as a matter of
there.
fact, it's not going very well for either of the candidates. We have just over 180 days till Election Day.
Hard to believe.
And Joe Biden and Donald Trump are not doing great. So right now, Joe Biden is suffering in the polling numbers, mainly due to his dealing with the Israel-Palestine conflict, using a lot among youth voters, college students. He hasn't been doing great for a long time with those demographics already. So I think right now he's really taking a hit for that.
I think the problem he has outside of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the problem that I think Biden has is when he ran in 2020, he ran on the promise of the student loan forgiveness, which he knew inherently he didn't have the constitutional right to do.
Well, he knew that he didn't have the Supreme Court votes to get it passed.
The Supreme Court doesn't legislate. The Supreme Court only decides if something is constitutional or not. He had control of Congress in the first 2 years of his presidency to have gone the route he needed to go. And I'm not quoting a conservative Supreme Court justice when I say this. I'm actually quoting former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. It has to go through Congress. He knew that. He made false promises. He tried to pass it.
It wasn't a false promise. It was the knowledge that Joe Manchin was going to, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema were going to basically upend that kind of
He tried to do it. He tried to do it unilaterally. The Supreme Court rightly said it's unconstitutional. So he's continued to correctly said that it's unconstitutional. And so I guess my overall point is, how many times are you going to promise this? So then they made the same promises in the midterms.
Sure.
Still nothing has come to fruition. And
well,
nothing frankly
is
come to fruition.
Debt forgiveness has been going through. It's just a matter of the parameters around which he's able to cancel debt.
Right. But the overall point is, I think young voters are feeling taken advantage of. And
certainly not by Biden. I think a lot of the animosity that young people have regarding the debt forgiveness lies with the Supreme Court. As with so many issues that have been decided for the Supreme Court lately.
But it can't lie with the Supreme Court because, again, this gets into the Supreme Court doesn't legislate. The Supreme Court only decides whether it's constitutional or not. And if you have a basic understanding of the Constitution, you understand that a spending bill like that, because it is a spending bill to forgive student debt, has to originate in the House of Representatives. It did not. It can't originate with Biden going, it's done. You just can't do that. And this has been a problem.
Well, sure you can.
That is afflicted.
Executive order. That's what executive orders are for.
Only if you want them to be challenged. And this has been the issue that I've had for years with executive orders, especially executive orders that spend money, because at least there's been one thing that's been consistent, is executive orders that spend money are constantly challenged and constantly ruled unconstitutional. Whether it's been Bush as president, Obama as president, Trump as president, or now Biden as president. And it gets into a greater discussion about how our system has become somewhat lazy, where Congress doesn't want to do anything, kind of how they were designed to operate, but that's a whole other conversation for another day. But Congress doesn't want to do anything, so the president sits there and says,
well, theoretically not doing nothing, but checks and balances,
right?
In theory,
right. So I think that Biden is suffering from, first of all, the age is always going to be an issue. Younger voters
the age is always going to be an issue.
Aren't going to feel like they want to gravitate towards him. And it's to a point where I think, nationally speaking, it's impossible to have any sort of political discussion because nobody's ever going to be able to please anybody on a national level. And again, you get into the unpopularity of Bush. Obama left with I think he left with over 50%. He was the first president since Reagan to leave with an over 50% approval rating. But again, Trump was in the tank, and now Biden is in the tank. It's at a point where I think we perceptually believe that the presidency has this be-all, end-all ability to solve a lot of the problems when that was never the original design of the federal government to begin with. And I think as we begin to see more and more people gravitate towards the idea that the federal government is going to take care of these things, the less and less able, no matter what party you're in, the president, or even that by extension Congress, is going to be able to execute the things that people want them to execute. And you get rid of civics in school, so people don't understand. I shouldn't say they don't understand, but you cap the size of the House of Representatives. People have no connection to their congressmen anymore because now they represent almost 1 million people, 800,000 people, and that's the issue. So Biden is sort of a symptom, or Biden's numbers, and again, they were Trump's numbers 4 years ago, 8 years ago. They were W. Bush's numbers. They're symptomatic of an overall shift in the mood and attitude of the American public, which is they believe that the presidency can and should do more, and he's losing those young voters.
But the reason that they think that the presidency should be doing more is a direct result of Congress not stepping up to do what Congress theoretically should be doing.
Well, yes and no. I mean, I've always often argued.
Yes and no?
Yes and
no. You have to pick one.
I'm picking yes and no. The reason I say yes and no is so, like, here's the thing. Like, Congress was designed to be slow and deliberative.
Sure.
And there's a reason why the Senate was 6 years, and there's a reason why the Senate wasn't directly elected by the people, and the House was 2 years, right? Because the House was supposed to churn out, and the House expanded, and the House grew, and right now, if you kept with the apportionment, if you never had the Apportionment Act, it was in 1935, the House of Representatives would be, what, over 2,000 people right now?
Sure.
If you didn't cap the size of it. Now, that said, you'd have 27, 35 congressmen from Massachusetts, you'd have a stronger connection to them. And they would pass more and they would do more, and then the Senate would be the ones that would sift through what they wanted to sift through and decide ultimately what is passable and what isn't. So I think when I say yes and no, it's okay to me that Congress doesn't get things done. But the problem now is you've constructed a bureaucratic system, the fourth branch of government, which is the bureaucracy. You've constructed the bureaucracy in which the presidency has the executive control over, and that's where they're trying to carry out policy, and it's not the way the system was intended or designed to work. When it comes to things like student debt forgiveness, think about how disingenuous this entire thing has been. You have colleges that are charging an exorbitant amount of money because they're guaranteed to get paid, whether it's I'm from a rich family, or I get a scholarship, or I'm getting a federally backed student loan. I have a mortgage. I understood when I signed on that. First of all, let me back up. When I purchased my home for less than $300,000, there's no way, I know, there is no way I could have purchased that at 18. There is not a single bank on planet Earth that would have let me walk into it with zero credit, no job, no experience, and say, give me $300,000 to buy a house. A two-family, a multifamily. Now, mind you.
But you do that exact thing for students.
You do that exact thing for students. And I've argued it is wrong.
Yeah.
It is inherently, I never like to use the term evil. It's not evil. It is so wrong on so many levels that you are roping in students. And I'll give credit. I think that Florida passed a financial literacy component to their high school graduation. We need to get a grip on this because schools are going to charge whatever they want. Colleges will charge whatever they want. They're guaranteed to get paid. They're guaranteed to get their money regardless. We are taking 18-year-old kids, 17-year-old kids, they're not even 19, they're 17 and 18-year-old kids, sitting them down and saying, we're going to give you, with no credit, no job experience, no life experience, no collateral, nothing, we're going to give you $100,000 loan, $200,000 loan, when if that same kid walked in and let's say they went to a vocational school and they have they've begun their journey as a plumber or an electrician. If they walked in and said, you know what, I want a $100,000 loan so I can buy work vans and tools to start my plumbing business, that bank would say no.
Yeah.
And I know this is off what we were talking about with Biden, but again, it's a symptomatic problem where you made a decision, and this is what makes me a Republican, is you made a decision. Ignorance will only get you so far, and ignorance is never a defense of the law, right? You know what you're doing when you are being told you borrow this money, you pay it back. I understood it at 17 and 18 years of age. That's why I didn't take out student loans. I went to community college and I went to state college, and I got my degrees
I feel like now
debt-free.
you're saying the exact opposite of what we were just agreeing on for a moment, which is this is a kind of exploitative practice to basically insist onto these kids.
Well, it is.
College
So
is a necessity.
I want to change.
So they take out a loan,
right.
which
so
is
I want
also
to
a
change the
necessity.
exploitative practice, and student loan forgiveness doesn't change the exploitative practice.
Yes.
And that's the problem.
It's a Band-Aid that doesn't
Right.
address the
it just
overall
says, all right,
thing.
well, wipe
Yes.
it clean.
Absolutely.
And then because it
And then
becomes a
if
carrot
it doesn't
and a stick.
change anything, then they continue
It
to charge
doesn't. It
whatever
won't
they want.
change anything.
Absolutely.
And so no, I think we're in agreement. It's an exploitative practice, and I despise it, and it needs to be changed.
Yeah.
And student loan forgiveness will not in any way, shape, manner, or form change or correct the exploitative practice that is taking advantage of these kids, and that's exactly what they're doing. And again, I'm a huge fan of, I went to community college, I got an associate's degree, I went to a state 4-year school, and look, I got into a private 4-year institution, and my parents, I was lucky, my parents had the ability to pay for my college.
Sure.
And I say I was lucky, that's the greatest economic advantage I ever got.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Secondarily from getting the degree, the greatest economic advantage I had was no student debt. And my parents told me, look, when I was done at Massasoit, I got into Bridgewater State and I got into Stonehill. And my parents said, we can pay for Bridgewater. If you want to go to Stonehill, you'll have to take out a loan.
Sure.
And I said, you know what? I'm a poli-sci major. There wasn't at that time too much of a difference in the quality of programs. I said, why would I spend extra money? And I love Stonehill, don't get me wrong,
Sure.
but why would I spend that money? And I graduated debt-free, and within 5 years of graduating, I purchased a 2-family that is now worth twice what I paid for it. So
it's a great financial choice, but
Right.
not one that everyone has access to, which is
well, and that is
essentially
true,
why.
and I think that's why, again, we need to earnestly invest in community colleges. We need to earnestly invest in these state universities, but even still, some of these state universities are not cheap.
Sure,
They're charging
absolutely.
buco bucks, but it's exploitative and it takes advantage of people, and it's taking advantage of kids. And I do feel bad, but it really needs to be stated and understood. When you're signing on that dotted line, you are borrowing money, and that money will be. It's not like when you borrow $20 from mom and then you just forget to pay her back. That bank wants its money back,
Yeah.
and it's going to get its money back. And that's the bottom line. And the exploitative practice needs to be reformed. It needs to be looked at, and we need to earnestly address that. I'm not going to ever entertain student loan forgiveness because you know what? If you're forgiving student loans, forgive my mortgage then.
Well, your mortgage isn't a student loan.
Well, why do mortgage forgiveness? Just forgive people's mortgages.
But
why not?
Because I think that you.
I don't
you
believe in
you're
that.
Right, exactly.
At all.
You're,
But my point is, if we're going to forgive one subsection of debt,
because we've just
Let's
talked about
forgive another subsection
We've
of
just
debt.
talked about the individual circumstances that make that kind of debt so pernicious and exploitative to the people who take out those loans. When someone takes out a loan for a mortgage, that's not some 17-year-old who just got told, hey, listen, you got no choice, you got to get a mortgage, it's important, and it's an important piece to your financial future.
I don't disagree. But obviously, we need to correct the exploitative practice of student loans.
Yes,
I
we
will
agree on that.
never agree on student loan forgiveness.
I think student loan forgiveness is a great thing. Let's do it. All right, so wrapping that up, we have plenty of other things apart from student debt forgiveness that is
Can
not
you tell
going
it's a
well for
favorite
Joe
topic of mine?
Biden. Not student debt forgiveness is a favorite topic of yours?
Well, talking about the exploitative practice that is higher education.
Sure, absolutely.
The Tony Soprano-esque way that higher ed works.
Yes,
Loan sharking and,
absolutely.
shaking you down.
Quinn, still make sure that you go to college, though. It's
Yes,
important.
go to school.
Yeah.
Look, well, you know what? Yes, go to school. We're talking to our fine producers and engineers. Go to school. It's important. And I'm a firm believer in advancing yourself. But don't do something because society makes you feel like you have to do it, right? Don't ever feel like you need to do X, Y, and Z because my classmates are doing it or because society says so. Look, when I graduated high school, I didn't immediately go to community college because it was looked at like, oh, you're going to go to community college, can't do that. And I regret that because of all the institutions I went to, and I did go to grad school for a semester, that was my favorite one, right? I loved Massasoit, and I'm a huge fan of it. I'm a huge advocate for it. So I guess to tie up that segment, do for you what you feel is best. Having the education is going to obviously give you advantages. Having that bachelor's degree will, but you know what? There are plenty of other jobs and plenty of other roles. A poli-sci major like myself will never be able to fix my own toilet. I'll never be able to wire a home. I'll never be able.
Sure you can. They got YouTube tutorial videos.
Right. As the home inspectors, because I work in real estate professionally, say, ask yourself this question. If I screw this up, will I burn my house down? If the answer is maybe or yes, call a professional. So, but the point is never do something that, do what you feel you need to do. Because at the end of the day, I have a bachelor's degree. Sure. Most places don't care where it's from. They don't pay attention to where it's from. It doesn't really matter where it's from.
I think that that's good advice in general. But I would say, again, in the...
I say that as someone who was never getting into Harvard.
Sure. Oh, yeah. No, both of us did not apply to Harvard.
No.
Neither of us...
the closest thing to the Ivies we're getting are the decorations.
Hey, Mr. Jokes over here, huh?
Front of this.
Who says Republicans aren't funny?
Oh, I'm the funniest one of all.
Well, it's a low bar, so...
Ronald Reagan was pretty funny.
Ronald Reagan was pretty funny. Oh, man. Oh, it was so... never mind. All right. No, I was going to say... We'll cut that. But Joe Biden, lots of things that he's suffering on. Student debt being one of them. Donald Trump is also in the first criminal trial of a former United States president. Is that true?
I believe it is. Yeah. Yeah, I think that is correct.
That seems like a big deal.
Yeah, you know, one of the things about President Trump that has always, I don't want to say bothered me, because I don't give it that much thought. So many of these things that come up with him are unavoidable. No, I'm sorry, they are avoidable, not unavoidable.
Sure.
Like
easily avoidable.
Like right, like he didn't have to sleep with a porn actress.
No.
He didn't have to do...
But society was telling him he had to, Jared.
I have never done that and never will. But I think that it is interesting when you consider the framing of it. And I'm not a judge. I'm not a lawyer. I don't live in these states.
You're not?
No, I can tell you, I think... You know, I think that some of the cases, like, you know, the one in Georgia is obviously interesting.
The Georgia trial, which for our millions of listeners, is revolving around Trump's election interference in 2020 with calling the Georgia Secretary of State and basically asking to, quote unquote,
right. But then you look at some of the corruption within that prosecutor's office. So I think there's...
Both sides!
Well, look, I think, again, so much of... Look, I'm a Republican ideologically and stylistically as much as I can be in the mold of Ronald Reagan. So as much as I've always appreciated and will defend Trump's policies, it gets difficult to wrap my mind around some of these actions, right? I mean, you look at Reagan... And you look at the Iran-Contra affair that occurred in the late 80s, not to go down memory lane or history lane too much here, but you look at how he handled that. And obviously there were people in his administration that broke the law, and they did break the law. They violated the law. Yeah. And do I think President Reagan himself knew they were doing it? At first, no. Obviously, it was brought to his attention.
We did not exchange weapons for hostages, but you did, though.
But my point is, if you watch that press conference...
We may have exchanged weapons for hostages.
But if you watch his address, he owns it. He takes responsibility for it. And he
had a famous quote that was something along the lines of, like, I promised the American people we would not exchange weapons for hostages.
And he said something
and he's like, I still believe that in my heart, but the facts say that that's not the case.
Right. Sometimes grace and humility go a long way, and Reagan had it. Reagan had it, and that's why I have a hard time rectifying some of what has occurred. Do I think, I'm always a firm believer that the truth does lie somewhere in the middle, right?
Sure.
So do I think President Trump is as guilty as the left wants him to be on some of this stuff? Absolutely not.
Well,
but he's not a political martyr that the right wants him to be either. Like, it's somewhere in the middle. It's like he did stupid things that were completely and totally unnecessary in a lot of cases. But does it rise to the level of criminality? I don't think so.
And the reason I do think so is because of exactly what you're saying, which is some very easily avoidable things. There are so many things that Trump could have done where he did all of the things that he did, except did those things without breaking the law. He could have done the hush money case, but not used campaign funds or not covered it up or dealt with Michael Cohen in a different way. But he had to do the stupid thing, hoarding documents at Mar-a-Lago. The government calls him up and are like, hey, give us back our boxes of documents. All he had to do was be like, oh yeah, I guess I found them, here you go. Instead, he's like, no, they're mine, I want them. It's like you constantly choose the path of most resistance,
right.
And it eventually stumbles into the territory of potentially illegal activity.
Well, and that's the point. And when it comes to like the documents, I mean, we built the federal district for a reason. Okay, so
did we?
Yes.
Oh, what is it?
The federal district was built to house the federal government.
Okay.
So, I mean, not just Trump, but Biden, when Biden was vice president, obviously Vice President Pence also had documents. Simple solution to this. You know what? You want to leave the Capitol and go to your personal and private residence, okay. Sure. You're not taking these documents. They are not leaving Washington, D.C. Sure. They will be under lock and key of the National Archives or the NSA or whatever you need it to be. No more. I mean, Biden had them in his garage next to his Mustang that he probably hasn't driven in 30 years. So, like, no more. Enough is enough of this. But we spend a lot of money on this nonsense with the presidency because they're jet setting and traveling to their residences. Well, you know what the simple solution is? We built the White House.
Sure.
We built the federal district specifically to house the federal government and we did not outfit Mar-a-Lago for this. We did not outfit Dover, Delaware for that.
Right.
We did not outfit Indiana for Vice President Pence.
But the
so
difference,
you want to take time off, don't go to your home and work from home. You're the president of the United States. We built you this. We invested in this. We spent a lot of money on the White House.
But the difference with all of these other previous presidents and presidential candidates and vice presidents and all of these people who have had classified material in their homes or, were dealing with them in an insecure way or what have you, right? Not up to standard. The only difference is that all of those people give the documents back to the government. This is the one scenario where he's like, no.
Yeah,
they're mine to trade like at the poker tables.
And that is the issue. And I
just
don't
make it into a
that.
paper airplane and sail it to some Saudi Arabian diplomat who's hanging out at your Mar-a-Lago.
Well, and therein lies
ballroom.
the problem. And again, so much of what President Trump does is avoidable.
Yeah.
And that's frustrating for me as an elected official, as a candidate, as someone who's worked with candidates. Not that I've ever, in any way, shape, manner, or form, worked on a presidential campaign on that level. But these things are avoidable.
Yeah.
And they don't need to be happening.
They're not avoidable anymore because he could have avoided them at any point. He didn't, and now here we are. But my question to you, Jared Valenzola, is this. Why is it that this trial, the first ever criminal trial of a former president of the United States of America, why is that not affecting Donald Trump's poll numbers at all? Why is it that they've been steady throughout?
Well, because it's a 50-50 country, and it's being framed as a political witch hunt. And he has effectively, at least for those on the right, and I think some of those in the middle to middle right, he's effectively framed himself as a political martyr, as someone who's been targeted because of his beliefs. And do I necessarily agree with that framing? No, I don't. But I mean, that's, I think, the basic explanation of why he's holding firm. And the bottom line is, what did he say 8 years ago? He could shoot someone on, Fifth Avenue and people still vote for him. And that's true for Biden. I mean,
well,
so
I don't think that's true, though, because as we've seen recently, Biden's poll numbers have sank with pretty much everything since the beginning of the Israel-Palestine conflict. Because
true. I mean, Trump has captivated a significantly loyal base of support.
Yes.
Unlike that, which I think, again, not to keep memory laning back to Reagan, but not since Reagan, I think has, Obama obviously has captivated a lot of staunch support as well. But Trump has a fervent base that is at the ready to defend him no matter what, and at any length. And
Now, where do you see people like the Nikki Haley's of the Republican Party? The people who are like, this legal stuff with Trump is going to be a real problem.
Yeah.
We need to vote for someone who's not Trump.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously that ship sailed. Nikki Haley tried to make that case.
But she hasn't endorsed him yet.
Oh, and she won't, and it won't matter. She's
right, but that's what I'm saying.
Irrelevant in the party now.
Well, yes, but you are talking about a small percentage of the Republican Party, but it's a percentage that is there. So ultimately, are you seeing that small Nikki Haley segment of the Republican Party as people who have the come to Jesus moment and ultimately vote for Trump, or people who are watching this trial and being like, I don't like this, and this guy should not be
I mean, it'll be interesting.
president?
Yeah, it'll be interesting to dive into what those numbers start to bear out in, frankly, the swing states. I mean, it obviously isn't going to matter what happens in Massachusetts or Oklahoma. Those states are voting for Biden and Trump respectively. There is polling that has indicated if Trump is convicted of any of these things, that will start to sink him.
But again, now I'm going down memory lane here. But we've been talking about the thing that's going to sink Trump, and we've been talking about that since 2015.
Right.
And it still hasn't happened.
Right.
I mean, the scandal after scandal, after insurrection and beyond, all of those things, and it's Teflon Don. Now scratch on him.
Yeah, well, I mean, like I said, he's been able to construct.
You don't want to scratch Teflon. It's
no. It leads to PFAS.
Yeah.
In the water. But I think he has, in some ways, he isn't entirely incorrect, but he's been able to frame himself as a martyr. He's been able to frame himself as.
Do you think he's trying to get himself into jail right now?
No.
He's constantly violating the judge's gag orders. He's constantly making these personal attacks on people on the jury, doxing jurors, attacking the judge's family, things like that. Do you think that plays into the martyrdom of Donald Trump, that he's trying to become imprisoned as a result of violating the gag order so that he can be like, the radical left has imprisoned me.
That could be it. I mean, I would hate to think that that's the direction he would be taking or the strategy he would be taking, but that could be it.
I'm inclined to think that Donald Trump does not want to go to jail.
Right.
I'm
inclined.
My natural inclination.
I don't want to go to jail.
I don't want to go to jail.
I do not want to go to jail myself.
If Donald Trump wins a re-election, please don't put me in jail. Please do not put me in the political gulag. Thank you.
We will not. And if Biden gets reelected, don't put me there.
I don't think that's going to be a problem.
No. On either side, to be clear.
Well.
It didn't happen the first 4 years. You're still here. I don't think it'll happen in the last.
It didn't happen the first 4 years. And I hope that there's not another.
History is always a good predictor of future activity and behavior.
Well, I mean, Donald Trump has changed in the past 4 years. And not changed in a way of like emotional growth. I'm saying changed in that he has seen more of what politics does and what it can accomplish for him personally. And while I agree that he's not someone who cares about ideological stuff, his main concern is, selling shoes and Bibles and having enough money to
Bibles was
you
that
know.
was a tough one.
Yeah.
Bibles.
Well, it's the good book, Jared. It's his favorite book. Remember 2 Corinthians, Jared? Oh, 2 Corinthians. That's my favorite book in the Bible as well.
Oh my goodness.
All right, so things aren't going great for Joe Biden. Things aren't going great for Donald Trump. Things also aren't going great for Kennedy. Not that he's relevant.
He's still a thing. That's right. How could I
He's
forget?
apparently still a thing. Dean Phillips has come and gone, but Kennedy will always stay. There must always be a Kennedy in politics, as the old adage
Right.
goes.
God forbid.
God forbid. And God has forbidden Kennedy from becoming president. But theoretically, Kennedy could still be a spoiler for either Trump or Biden.
Could be. Most polling seems to
polling
indicate.
suggesting that he's siphoning votes from Trump more
Right.
than Biden.
Right.
But I think that Kennedy is a tough one to predict.
Will he make the ballot in all 50 states?
In the majority of states, certainly. But I think that the thing with Kennedy is that he's kind of appealing to apolitical people.
Right.
So it's much harder to judge, weird single-issue voters or people who have not voted in 20 years.
Right.
It's much harder to get a dial on
Right.
what kind of people are supporting him. But in my humble opinion, I don't think that he's terribly relevant in the race right now. However, Donald Trump still needs to pick a VP candidate.
Indeed.
And recently we had news about Kristi Noem, who was at the top of the tier list for VP
Yeah,
picks.
I don't understand why the governor of South Dakota would move the needle for anyone. I mean, she is a former congressman as well, so she has a great resume. That's not a put down. She's the governor of a state, so I shouldn't put it that way. But I'm not sure she could stand up to the national scrutiny.
Well, I think that has become incredibly obvious with the
She has been
recent,
having a rough go of it these last few weeks.
Yes, about as rough as her poor dog Cricket. The context for this is that in her new book, she tells a story about shooting and killing the family dog, a 14-month-old puppy. I'm sorry that I'm laughing through this. I'm laughing at the absurdity of it, not the action.
I can't, obviously when people are farmers, is she a farmer? I don't think so. Is
she says that she grows up on a farm and
So,
that she does farming stuff and she kills animals all the time.
When people
apparently.
are farmers, obviously you do what you got to do. But
oh boy, Jared, do you want to go down this? This is the path you want to go
no,
down?
I'm just pointing out. I'm trying to finish the statement. Farmers have to make decisions with animals, but this is a family pet.
Yes.
And she wrote about it. You were under no obligation to do that to the dog. We're not on the prairie. We're not in the 1800s here where look, food's scarce. We gotta we gotta make hard decisions here. You could have just sent the dog to be adopted by somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely.
You could have rehomed the dog.
Sure.
We're not talking Little House on the Prairie 200 years ago. We're talking about 14 years ago this happened? She said.
I don't know.
But the point is I was making an overarching point. When people are farmers, you have to make decisions with animals. This was a family pet. You could have rehomed it. The part that I'm struggling with, why write about it?
Oh, sure.
Why put it in writing?
Sure.
Are you trying to show you're tough? Yeah, that dog was annoying, so I shot it. What?
And
on what planet is that even remotely a story you tell to mixed company? I wouldn't even tell that. I'll tell you what. I've never done that, and in no way, shape, manner, or form do I even advocate anybody ever doing that.
Well, that's crazy because just off
In the
mic,
21st
Jared was
century.
telling me about the many bodies left in his wake.
That is not true.
It absolutely is. There's no audio to prove it, but believe me, trust me.
Ian's got jokes. I wouldn't tell that story outside my immediate family. I wouldn't tell a cousin or an uncle that story.
Sure.
Let alone tell that story in mixed company, let alone tell that story in public, let alone
do it.
Write that. Yeah, I wouldn't do it. But then, if I've done it, O.J. Simpson.
If I did
it,
it's so crazy. That's the name of Kristi Noem's book. Is If I Did It.
Is it?
No,
I know it's not. I can't. I think, from my understanding is, I think she was trying to show that she's like tough.
Yeah, I think so.
Tough.
Yeah.
So you shot the family dog?
Yeah.
It's
awful.
Just don't.
It's real awful.
It's terrible. Does that take her out of the running for Trump's VP though? Probably not. I don't think so.
I mean, Trump famously
should.
hates dogs.
Does he?
He does. But Trump at least has the decency to hate dogs and therefore not get one as a pet.
Don't get one, and then don't shoot it if it's not working out.
If there's one nice thing I can say about Donald Trump, it's that I have not heard any credible stories of him killing puppies with guns.
That's always a good thing. We appreciate our politicians not killing puppies with
Please don't
weapons.
kill any more dogs.
Yeah, I don't. Why would you write about that?
I don't know, Jared. I don't have an answer for you.
I can't fathom
the
it.
question then becomes, what non-dog killing contenders are there to be Trump's VP?
I mean, Elise Stefanik has certainly been bandied about. Tim Scott.
She's only killed cats, so she's fine.
She has probably never killed any animals. I'm not sure. First of all, I'm not sure what he's waiting for. I'm not sure what's taking him so long. He's been the presumptive nominee for 2 months now, right after Super Tuesday. So yeah, 2 months as we film this in early May, or tape this in early May. So I'm not sure what's taking so long. I'm not sure what he's looking into.
I think he just doesn't want anyone to be vice president.
Yeah,
I think he just wants both jobs.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Scott certainly seems to be in the pole position as well.
See, Tim Scott seems like the kind of guy Trump wouldn't want for like being too weird.
I don't think he's that weird.
Well,
the girlfriend is real.
Yeah, she's totally real. She lives in Canada. You don't know her. She's not on Facebook, so you wouldn't know her. Yeah, she goes to a different school. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the smart political choice for Trump to make would be Nikki Haley.
Yeah,
it would.
It would. It absolutely
would completely unify the party.
Yep. It's never going to happen.
It will not happen.
Well,
he will not pick anybody. I mean,
a similar weird pick to Nikki Haley that I've heard. I don't think that there's any validity to it, but Tulsi Gabbard, as someone who is a former Democrat, someone that you could get that would also theoretically be a way of consolidating your base that might be flirting with Kennedy.
Yeah, but Tulsi Gabbard doesn't do anything for the Republican Party. I mean, you still need someone.
So much of the Republican Party, pardon me for saying, is about owning the libs, quote unquote. I think that that's a not insignificant part of the Republican platform.
Yeah, I just don't.
Getting someone who's like, see, they used to be a Democrat, but now they've quote unquote seen the light, so now they're on our side.
Yeah, I mean, that's not worthy of being the running mate on a major party ticket.
I disagree. I mean, I can think about it the other way. I can definitely see a scenario where if Joe Biden was running in 2020 and had some kind of moderate Republican who stepped up and was like, hey, I'm a Republican, but, I'm an American first, and this division has to stop, and this is a unity ticket, all that kind of stuff. It's a fun little story.
Yeah.
And that's all a VP is really good for anyway. The VP doesn't move the needle in pretty much any direction.
It hasn't. Not since Johnson in 60. I just don't see how Tulsi Gabbard does anything.
Sure.
Oh,
you just mean like in her life?
No, I mean politically.
Oh, okay.
She's a veteran. I give her a lot of credit. I like Tulsi Gabbard.
I bet you do.
But, well, it's more like she's kind of politically homeless.
Yes.
And it's like,
see,
why
that's
is it...
the perfect option for VP. You have no prospects, no real political future.
Not,
step up.
That's
be
not
VP.
the job. That's... You don't take someone who's politically homeless and slot them into being the running mate. I mean...
You absolutely do. Donald Trump's top priority... The vice president to Donald Trump just needs to be the person who eats dirt for him,
But is she going to do that?
Sure, why not? She doesn't have anything else going on.
I'm not sure. I mean, I've heard the name bandied about as well. I know a lot of Republicans like her and like that idea. I personally disagree with it.
Bandied about. What does that mean? We both said that.
Bandied about. It means
bandied
to,
about.
like it means to
Bandied
put it out
about.
there.
Yeah, I know, but like, what is it?
We're gonna have to Google that off air. I think.
All right.
I think it just means to put it out there.
Okay. I believe you.
To have it out there.
That's how I use it.
I mean, Tim Scott would be great. You know, Marco Rubio's an interesting one because obviously they're both
Rubio
from
would
Florida.
be so funny.
I
Little
like Senator
Marco,
Rubio.
little Marco.
Yeah,
little
but
Marco
I mean,
who can't drink water.
it should be he should find a woman.
Yeah.
I think that's necessary. You know, or you know, a African American. You know, Tim Scott. I see Byron Donalds on there. I'm not a fan of a congressman.
Sure.
Being a running mate, I don't think a congressman's
Byron
ever.
Donald's also from Florida, so.
Yes, also from Florida.
And for the sake of context, the president and vice president cannot be from the same state. It sounds made up, but yeah,
Well,
that's a real thing.
So it's not that explicit. What the Constitution states is electors cannot vote for a candidate from the same state. So in theory, the presidential and vice presidential candidate can be from the same state. But in this example where President Trump is from Florida and say he picks Marco Rubio, also from Florida, the electors from Florida would be forced to pick whether they wanted to vote for Trump for president
Right.
or Donald or Rubio for vice president.
Right.
And depending on your margin of victory, that may or may not matter. In 2000, when Bush picked Cheney, Cheney moved back to Wyoming to satisfy this because he was from Texas. And obviously, that would have made a difference if Texas electors could not have voted
Sure,
in a
absolutely.
270 to 268 situation.
And that's the important point, which
Right.
is that someone can move or resign from their seat and
Right.
relocate in order to meet.
But
the
imagine
requirements.
if they could not have, and you had the electors having to vote for Lieberman for vice president in 2000. You would have had a different vice president. So, but obviously Trump has the flexibility to move back to New York, or frankly anywhere else in the country he wants to live. So,
Sure.
so Trump can absolutely say he's from wherever he wants,
and he will.
with no issue or compunction because he's got the resources to move and go wherever he wants. I mean, he still has Bedminster in New Jersey. So even if he didn't want to go to New York, he could go to Jersey.
Well, he can't leave New York right now.
Well, that's true.
So he's kind of locked in there. Pardon the pun. But I guess one is that for picking a VP, you don't really want someone in Congress because of how slim the Republican majority is.
Yeah,
right
well,
now.
that's not even it. I mean,
Really?
historically speaking,
What's the House majority right now? 2 people?
oh no, it's slim, but that wouldn't preclude you from picking. Like, if Byron Donalds were to leave, that seat would be safer. That's a safe
Sure,
Republican seat.
in that specific example, yes.
You don't
but-
pick a congressman because there's 435 of them. They don't have any semblance of a national brand whatsoever.
Sure.
For the most part. Now, some of them, like a Byron Donalds, obviously spends a lot of time in conservative media. So I've heard of him. I know who he is. But there are plenty of Democrat congressmen that spend time in progressive media that I've never heard of.
Sure.
That a liberal progressive would think, oh, this guy or gal would be great. They'd be perfect. I've never heard of them, and I'm pretty in tune, but I don't pay attention to
Well,
them.
but
as a Congress.
also theoretically, you're not really on the table for being won over to.
Oh, no, exactly. But my point is, like, at least picking a senator, you have the opportunity. Picking a senator generally means that they have had the opportunity to build more of a national brand that people know. Like I'm on the National Committee for the Young Republicans. Obviously, all of them know who Elizabeth Warren is.
Sure.
They don't really know who Ed Markey is, but they know who Elizabeth Warren is, right? We all know who Bernie Sanders is.
Sure.
We all know who Mitch McConnell is,
Who?
Ted Cruz, Rand Paul. So my point is, like, at least the senators have the capacity to build a more national brand
Yeah, they got name recognition.
that a House member
Yeah.
doesn't have the ability to do. So,
Well, unless
I mean, we've never elected a House member to the presidency.
really, Never.
Correct. Elected. Gerald Ford was a congressman who then, of course, became vice president and president,
Sure.
but
By whoops-a-daisy.
Yeah, but my right hand of God, to my knowledge, there's never been a congressman directly elected to the president. Left hand of God as well. Okay. There's never been a House member. I mean, look, we've only elected 2 sitting U.S. senators directly into the presidency, so it's generally a rare occasion that any member of Congress, whether the House or the Senate, gets elected into the presidency.
Does this mean Vivek Ramaswamy is a VP pick then?
God, no. No, I
Vivek the fake.
Yeah, it was too much. That was an interesting exercise to just meet Donald Trump.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was like
if you just raised or donated $10,000 to a dinner, you could have just had dinner with them.
He won a prize or something.
Millions of dollars.
He's a contest winner.
Right, running for president.
Yeah.
If you just raised or donated $50,000, you could have just met Donald Trump.
Yeah, he took the long road to do that.
Oh, yeah.
So, we've got Donald Trump. We've got Joe Biden. One of those 2 people is going to be the next president. And most people are not very happy about it. What do you think is going to be the deciding factor? I know we're 6 months out, and those 6 months are going to feel like 6 years. But if we are judging it off of right now, what do we think is going to be the decisive issue that breaks Trump or Biden or gives a boost to Trump or Biden? What do you think is going to be the decisive piece in the next 6 months?
To quote one of your Democrat longtime operatives, James Carville.
Comrades.
James Carville.
Oh, James Carville. The Raging Cajun.
It's the economy, stupid, and it's always the economy.
You have to say it with the Cajun accent.
I can't. And that'll be it. At the end of the day, it's always about the economy. It's always about people's comfortability and their standard of living, and that will be the deciding factor. Interest rates are still high. Inflation is still high. People can't buy homes. People don't have the ability to sell a home because where are you going to go?
Sure.
There's a lot of issues in the economy that by no means get talked about at all in any media outlet, right or left. But obviously the old expression with gas prices as well. But if people are continuing to feel that pinch, they're going to take it out on someone.
Yeah.
And they're going to take it out on President Biden. And again, Trump lost 4 years ago because of COVID. I would argue if COVID was never a thing, Trump probably would have been reelected.
I 100% agree with you on that.
So
I think that's something really that gets overlooked a lot.
It does. So now,
because I feel like we're kind of doing a bit of a memory wipe on COVID.
We are
the COVID years.
We're having a rematch now, and I think people now are genuinely looking at this and saying, the economy wasn't so bad under President Trump, and right now it's and look, I mean, obviously, the federal spending that was spent around COVID is what has led to inflation.
Sure.
Again, the theme of this episode is Ronald Reagan. As Ronald Reagan said, inflation is the price you pay for free money. So you're paying for that now. You're paying for those stimulus checks, and you're paying for those PPP loans one way or another. You're paying for it now through inflation. That will be ultimately what breaks that way. I still don't know. I
don't know either.
Can't predict it.
Yes, you can. You just don't know if you're going to be right.
Well, that is true. And I always like to be right. It's hard.
I like to be left, huh? Hey, jokes.
I like it. I think that whether it's real or perceived, you have Biden's cognitive abilities are constantly called into question. He does himself no favors as it relates to quelling those concerns for people. The economy is, and it's funny because it's not funny, but the economy is not in a recession. The economy is in an incredibly strange place.
Yes.
Right?
But
and
so much of it is kind of reformatting James Carville's quote. It's the vibes, dude. The economy may be doing well, but people don't feel it. Inflation may be coming down, but people still see the prices at grocery stores. It's a lot of
And their gas
perception
prices.
about the economy rather than the,
But I
how
think
the numbers. On the
yeah,
economy
but I
itself.
think again the biggest thing, and this is really starting
Gas
to.
prices. By the way, I'm going to tell you a quick story. Get ready. Are you ready? Here it
I'm
comes.
ready.
All right.
I love stories.
I've been seeing at gas stations so many of these damn stickers. These like.
I did that.
Yeah, that was the classic one a couple of years ago. But there's just so many pro-Trump stickers that get put on gas pumps, and it drives me bananas. I don't like it.
Do you take them off?
I did. I took off one. It was like an especially offensive one, let's say. So I scraped it off with my credit card, and it was really difficult to do. So I was like, I'm not going to bother.
No,
doing
I mean I think that's what it comes down to, and again,
and I think people need to be exposed to the infuriating side of Republican politics and their gas sticker nonsense.
Yeah, I mean
People got to know what they're voting against.
Yeah, I mean again, I think the bottom line is, Biden beat Trump in 2020 because of
Well,
COVID.
it depends who you ask.
Biden beat Trump
It's very rare that we get to hear a Republican say that. So
in 2020, and you want to believe that in a rematch it's going to go that same way. I don't think it will.
I doubt that as well.
I think Trump pulls it off.
If the election
And the
were held
Republican
today,
Party,
absolutely.
and the Republican Party has finally woken up and
Anti-woken up.
and gotten its head out of its butt as it relates to mail-in voting.
Matt, can we do a single on me?
And I love it. But they have woken up and understand that voting by mail and early voting is a thing in states, and you need to do something about it. Complaining about it isn't going to change it. Complaining about the media is never going to change it. You go into it with eyes wide open. It's not like it's a secret that the media is going to have some semblance of a bias. Every person and everything has a bias.
Sure.
Nothing is non-biased. It's impossible. So you go into it knowing that we are now, at least as a party, going into these elections knowing and understanding that voting by mail and early voting is a thing. Look, when I was elected in 2020, I was one of the only Republicans in Massachusetts that actually had a plan to deal with voting by mail and early voting. And I remember I said it to candidates and the chair of the party at the time. I handed them a list. I go, these are 19,000 Republican voters in Plymouth County that vote by mail or voted early in the primary. And they go, we're Republicans. We don't believe in that. Sure. I go, no, they did it.
It's the vibes, dude. Republicans
up.
went with a narrative that voting by mail was inherently voter
fraud. Right, but I said these are Republicans who signed up to vote by mail.
Yes.
They're registered Republicans. They took Republican ballots. That was 19,000 voters. I had a plan to reach them specifically, and I won. And Trump and the RNC in 2020, all the way down the line, through state parties, county parties, local parties, not only had no plan to address it, but dismissed even the notion of addressing it.
Absolutely. And going back to what we were saying earlier, Donald Trump has a pattern of doing things that are so easily avoidable.
But my point now is the RNC and the Trump campaign and the Mass GOP and other state parties across this country, Republican state parties, have done a 180 on it.
Oh, yeah.
They now fully recognize and understand we can't ignore this. We can't pretend like this doesn't exist any longer.
Well, because they want to get the most votes, and also because they can decide that voter fraud is a problem no matter what.
Right, exactly.
Democrats always will cheat if a Democrat wins, and the voting was done faithfully and kindly if a Republican wins.
Naturally.
But we're about to wrap up here. So, Jared, is there any final note, anything you want to tell the people, any words of wisdom, any word of warning that we want to give?
No. No, it's always great to be back. I know we had a little gap in hiatus. But, again, we got a long way to go. There's going to be a lot of stuff that happens and breaks. We'll be sure to consume it, digest it, break it down for you here at O Politics.
Well said. Well, for Jared Valenzola and me, Ian Deming, this has been Uh-Oh Politics. We thank you very much for watching, listening, viewing with...
whatever mode of medium you use.
Absolutely. We just appreciate you. You, Dean Phillips. Dean Phillips, I am addressing you. We thank you so much. And Dean, please come on the show. We know you're not running anymore, but you could be our third host. You could be our best bud.
We can have a third chair in here.
Yeah.
Why not?
This has been the Dean Phillips Show. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time.